started the exploration. I'm trying to finish a book for Routledge called Digital Transformation and the Future of Privacy, which is quite an ambitious title. So I'm beginning to look at the future of privacy. But the issue is that the environment's changing so much. I'm having a hard time stopping the book because there's immediately a new issue comes up. So this is a new issue that obviously has substantial privacy implications. And I want to just spend sort of 20 minutes, half an hour at the outside, I hope, exploring and presenting some of the sort of landscape, some of the system. I'm not offering any solutions or conclusions. I'm not even offering at the moment a theoretical framework, but I am offering a sort of approach to studying this. You may be aware of Berndt's book on systems and AI and AI ethics. I think that this system that we're going to look at needs some kind of system approach. And I think my conclusion will be briefly that this is a complex system that we can't just reduce, but that we've got to use system techniques to explore. So I'm going to do this briefly by using something called soft systems methodology that some of you may have come across. It dates from the early 90s and even back from a guy called Peter Checkland. And it's a way of understanding what's called purposeful activity systems. And purposeful activity systems or human activity systems are the way groups of people within organizations or cross organizations are trying to achieve a purpose. And what soft systems methodology recognizes is that this is a messy system. Checkland calls it a problematical system, a problematical situation, where we don't even know what the problem is, let alone identifying a solution. And I would suggest, and systems thinking suggests, that there is no sort of silver bullet, there's no one solution, and we see that playing off in this particular case. And that rather, by understanding the system, understanding the stakeholders, the human interactions, and then trying to say, right, we've got this messy situation. Well, what actually, if we try and distill it down and boil it in a kettle, what do we find out is actually the system is about? And the methodology follows through from trying to find out what the hell's going on to trying to develop a conceptual model, which in soft systems case is rather limited to something called a root definition, which is the what, how, and why of this system, and something called CATWO, which is a mnemonic for looking at who are the customers, who are the actors, what's the transformation that the system does, what is the worldview, who are the owners, and what's the environment within which it is. So I'm going to use that to try and explore the UK digital ID system. So this is a rich picture. It's hand drawn. It's I'm afraid I started off with an H pencil, so this is not as clear as perhaps a HB pencil. So it's pencil drawn on A3C. And what it enables me to do, and what hopefully enable us to do, is to start thinking through what happens, what this is. So on the 26th of September this year, Keir Starmer from Number 10 announced that the government would be developing and producing a digital ID for all available for all UK citizens, and that would be available that would be implemented by the end of Parliament. What is this going to do? Well, it's going to run on our mobiles. It's going to be free. Here's my explainer. There's a lot of sort of talk, oh, it's free, you don't have to pay for it. Well, who wants to pay for a government digital ID? It's going to give a clear message to stop people making that crossing across the channel. So it's about managing migration and immigration. It's about a political target. So Starmer says it's going to stop people making that crossing across the channel. It's going to get people out of hotels. So it's addressing a political issue. And Starmer also talks several times actually about the pull factor. So the pull factor to this digital ID is UK citizens and the right to work and managing the gig economy and removing people who are doing illegal working. That is a focus of it. And it's clearly about, if you look, this picture is derived from an analysis or a read through of his statement on the 26th of September. And the whole focus is on how it's going to deal with the right to work. So you will have to have this app, and the app, where are we at? The app which the government also provided a digital ID explainer document. The app will store your name, date of birth, information on nationality or residency status, and a photo as a basics for biometric security. So we're looking at facial recognition as the prime approach. Just like an e-visa or a passport, but updated for the modern digital world we live in. It's also suggesting that after consultation, which is underway now, we may consider additional information like an address if it would be helpful to be included. So we see there's nothing really sort of concrete. This is very sort of fuzzy as to what it is. But of course, it's important because we already do mobile payments. It's just like the NHS app. And as we'll come back to briefly, it's related to the developments which was announced and started. Well, the ideas were there, and there was some indication to sort of technology providers as to what they were interested in with the government's digital wallet. So it's going to be available for a vast majority, and it's going to enable us to access vital government services. It's connected to their so-called plan for change, and the plan for change is Labour's document at the start of their being in government, which covers a whole range of issues, including immigration and increasing the digital. They talk about it's going to be tolerant and compassionate, but it's also going to be controlled and managed. And obviously the aim is to move from this rise of net migration to a drop of net migration, partly, I guess, politically to counter the rise of reform at the moment. But it's going to have security, which is called the best in class. So this is all, it's going to deal with illegal working, but it's also going to provide intelligence data to the Home Office somehow, where they will be able to see, there's the Home Office down to the middle right hand of the picture, and they in sort of which picture notation we have an eyeball, and the employers are being eyeballed by the Home Office. So there's this concept, this sort of what's the word, sort of pitching of what the government digital ID is going to be about. And a theme from Keir Starmer, that we're no longer, as you see in this picture down here, going to be scruffling through our boxes, throwing stuff out, trying to find a paper bill. So there's this concept of a paper bill, and we need a paper bill. We need to show a paper document for our electricity bill to get a bank account, to show in the pub and so on. So, but the emphasis of this is very much on the UK citizen and the right to work. And note, it's the UK citizen. So what is this system? Well, here is a route definition, modeled on Checkland's approach, and a CATWO. So the route definition is a system to provide digital IDs for all residents, UK residents who wish to work. So the thing is, I do not have to carry it on me. Police are not going to ask for it. So it's not really an ID in a sense, but I will need it to show to an employer. So the aim is to deal in a sort of point faction. It's being seen from this view of the system as a silver bullet. It's going to stop people coming in expecting to get jobs, and it's going to send a message. How is it going to be implemented? By an app which contains data about name, date of birth, etc. Why? To reduce migrants arriving illegally. So that's how it's been born. That's its focus, and that's what came across on the announcement in September. The customers are clearly the Cabinet Office and Border Security to help them manage the migration into the country. The actors, the Home Office, Cabinet Office, police, and it's going to be developed by the Department for Science and Industry and Technology, because there was an organisation called the Government Digital Service that was doing all this. They have been binned and absorbed rather into the DSIT. What is the transformation? A key part of understanding a system in Checkland's terms is a system transforms input to output. So Checkland expresses this as changing a need to a need met. So key often to understanding a human purposeful activity system and mapping it and conceptualizing it in soft systems is what is the transformation. And here the transformation is clearly boats, migrants regularly crossing to boat migrants rarely crossing. Migration, what is the world view? So there's various stakeholders have different world views. They look on a system and they see it as, a source of profit versus a source of human flourishing. So there's various views coming in. And clearly, the world view is migration must be reduced. If people won't come to the UK, if they know they won't be able to get employment, and that'll keep people out. The owner is HM government, because they're the ones that put it through an Act of Parliament. They allocate the funds, they pull the funds. What about the environment? When Checkland talks about environment, it's not necessarily trees, might be trees and rivers, but it's sort of the social, political, cultural environment. And here, I think, from the statement on the 25th, statement on the 26th, is that environment's law courts, its tech companies, its lobbyists, its technology infrastructure. But on the 23rd of October, that was a couple of weeks ago, Starmer was speaking at Barclays Bank. And out of this, another statement came about the proposed digital ID. So this statement was a bit shorter, but it has some distinct changes. So it's coming out of number 10. Here's number 10 door with the cat whose name I forget, sort of waiting to be let in. And the statement has changed, right? The audience has changed. It's about how this is going to make our lives easier. Because we already have Visa, we already have airline passes on our mobile. This is going to make our lives much easier. It's going to move us into, this is a strange phrase, the modern age. What is the modern age? The sense in which you're almost, Derrida, was it, said the text is the thing. You're almost trying to break down a text and look at what's going on. But he's saying it's going to put power back in people's hands. It's going to do social leveling. So the actual ID, the digital ID, is now being pitched and looked at from Britain, and British residents being able to have an easier life. He emphasizes that it's free. He emphasizes a bit also that he emphasized in the first that other countries are doing it. He referred to Estonia, India, I think Denmark, and somewhere else. And we'll have a quick look at Estonia's later on. But he's sort of trying to get various metaphors to say this is the digital ID is for you. It's to make your life easier. And I must admit, I almost burst out laughing at one point in this. So this theme of the poor person, and you see down the right-hand corner, scuffling about in a big box, pulling out stuff, is again emphasized as faff. Right? How are you going to, you're not going to faff about with that because you've got this digital ID, which is actually, it's like a boarding pass to life. So there's this sort of rhetoric emerging out of it about this easier life, about it's a click of a button. But note that the change in it was the UK in the first one. I believe, I haven't had time to research this, that there's problems with Northern Ireland already emerging. So the word changes to Britain, which is why the map, Ireland disappears off the map. He's also interestingly emphasizing that it will help you do various things. You will be able to get a driving license. You will be able to get a bank account. You won't have to faff through to find a bill in order to get a bank account. Well, when you look at the population, say for driving licenses, for example, and I do have a sheet of references so far that I can make available. 42 million of us have a driving license, and that is gone up. If you think the population is sort of 67 million, somewhere around there, that means, and you remove 1 to 16-year-olds, which represents 18%, you're down to possibly 8 million people who, you're down to a smaller number of people. So this is not as significant as it changes. And then this emphasis that you're going to be able to get a bank account without having to find your electricity bill. It emerges that 90% of the UK population have a bank account. And that brings you down to a few million who haven't. So this social leveling is, it sort of falls to bits in a sense when you actually start to unpick it. And the rhetoric of pointless bureaucracy, putting power in people's hands, social leveling, an easier life begins to sort of fray at the edges, I think. So this is a rich picture. It's what you do with rich pictures, actually, this is sort of me learning myself, but often what you do is you use rich pictures within an environment with, say, a focus group, and you start to pick out and identify who are the stakeholders, what's going on here. So what if we turn this into a root definition? Well, as you see, the root definition changes the why to make life easier. Both things mentioned in one sentence, but it disappears quickly. So who are the customers? The customers are the people of Britain now. The actors seem to have shifted to pubs, banks. We're going to have this nice digital thing to prove that we're over 18 and can buy a drink. Mortgage lenders, childcare providers, employees. The transformation. Oh dear. A transformation is obviously from searching for an electricity bill in an old box in the attic to the use of a digital ID. And the worldview is more digitization makes life easier. He talks about digitization bringing Britain into the modern age. The owner again is the HM government, of course, but the environment actually changes to supermarkets, estate agents, constraints on accessing a bank account, and so on. So by trying to do a bit of soft systems and portraying a rich picture and thinking about a root definition of CATRO, we begin to emerge something that says that there's there is an issue with understanding a digital ID system in terms of its purpose. And I will suggest briefly, before I open up for discussion, that what we find is underneath actually is a foundation of culture and a foundation of ethics and your ethics approach. So let's take a brief look at Estonia, because Estonia is an example that I think needs studying. And if we're to look at this further, I think we need to unpack India and others to begin to pick up issues with the systems, the ecosystem within which this operates. So here is Estonia up in the top left-hand corner. It's really, I think, sort of 2/3 of its borders coastline with the Baltic Sea. It's opposite Helsinki, and it's not that far. It's certainly within drone distance of St. Petersburg. This has since 2008, somewhere near there, forgive me if I found it in 2007, has been working on an EID, and it has an EID that everybody must have. You all have it on your phone. It is mandatory. It's got a technical ecosystem, so you can have it on a chip. You can have a card, like a banking card, with it on. You can put it on your mobile as put actually on the SIM, so that if you transfer the SIM between mobiles, or you can have it on an app. And there's a version of it that if you're, I don't know, if you're an external person, but you're coming in and out of the country a lot, you can get an e-residency, which is a slightly different status. So it's seamless. It's connected right through to voting, to your banking, to your shopping, to your health. In other words, it's something that is not sitting out there with government, but it's been integrated into society, into all aspects of life. And therefore, it's brought on board organizations, banks, stores, tax, police, theatres, cinemas, whatever. And each of those has an identification of a server, so they are identified as a legal receiver of data and a legal outputter of data, if you like, by a server and by registration. So there's a lot to this, and I would have to do an awful lot more reading to get a grip of it. So, this is really a flyover, if you like, using a sort of rich picture to portray it. Estonia lead digitally, probably the world, certainly the EU. And you may be aware, probably more aware than I am, of the eIDAS standards of the EU for digital identification and how countries are trying to match up to that. And Estonia's EID matches up to that. How does it work? There's three aspects, really. Firstly, there is that ID. Everybody has a digital ID, a distinct, unique number that you get from birth, and that stays with you. That is yours, and you can connect data to it on your mobile. Secondly, there is an infrastructure. It's called X-Road, and it has a central service, but that central service does not contain any data about anybody. That central service is about authorizations to be in the system, if you like. It's about authorizations to be a data requester or to be a service provider. It connects through to servers or through open source, and it connects to consumers and it connects to service providers, and you are members of it. Now, I think I've even got a bit of this diagram wrong because I started talking about public key infrastructures. The second aspect of it, you would need things like a two-step ID. So you have your PIN number on your phone. The digital signature is container based, and that means in software terms, please correct me if I'm wrong, a container is something where you put the software in this little box and it can sit on any operating system. It can move around because of the interface. The metaphor is a container going on a ship and then being moved elsewhere. But what it has, and the key to it, is actually something called KSI blockchain. And KSI stands for Keyless Signature Infrastructure. So what it's doing is providing security without the normal public key infrastructure. So you can see that I'm still trying to understand it. But the key is a blockchain. I won't go into blockchain because we need time for discussion, and I've got another picture to go into. But basically, it provides a traceable provenance of what has happened to data to something. Now, what is key with the KSI blockchain, which a company called what's their name? Guardtime, which is an Estonian company, and now the largest provider of blockchain applications in the world. They have built this. So KSI is a trademark, if you like. And the idea is no actual data is stored centrally. And the blockchain is not recording the data, it records a hash. So you send a hash to it, and that is put in blockchain with a timestamp. And again, I understand that this is time-based. It's not data-based. It's not transaction-based. So it's, if you're running it, it's checking every second and putting a timestamp on so that you can see that when that data was moved, if you like, or recorded from the hash. And if a hash changes the slightest bit, it shows up. So your blockchain is a set of hashes connected in, which gives you a track of what has happened to your ID or to a transaction. And you can't undo that. Once it's locked in, because of the way it hashes the next next block in the chain, if you change the block, if you change something in a block, then the hash would change. So the next segment would become wrong. So you'd know it. What I'm saying is, something's happened to that in the blockchain. It is nothing to do with Bitcoin. Doesn't work like Bitcoin at all. They call it, interestingly, and metaphors everywhere, digital defense dust. So that's the third aspect. So you've got the ID that you handle, you've got this infrastructure, you've got KSI blockchain. But over that technology is an extremely robust regulatory structure, regulatory ecosystem with lots of checks, with things like citizens can get a reward if they identify somebody doing something wrong with it. So there's a lot of layers that citizens work with to make that work. It talks about two things. If you look at the governance of it, it talks about trust. Trust is through data ownership, that you own the data and nobody else does, and through the data protection laws. So what I'm saying is not just a piece of technology sitting there, distinctive technology that is different from the way it's usually done. And it makes it interesting when Starmer is talking about state-of-the-art security, what exactly that means, and whether perhaps this could work if they contracted guard time to provide a KSI blockchain for it. So it's trust in data ownership, it's trust in the protection laws, but it's also transparency. Transparency in how it works, transparency in how data is moving, and accountability. And it seems to me, and this is something that needs much more investigation, that underneath is really an ethics and a culture of ethics and an ethical approach. In other words, when you strip things away, you're looking at philosophies, you're looking at ethics, you're looking at a political approach. There are problems with it. It has some people, have been times when a guy managed to look up the details of his intended health records, and that was captured, and the guy got prison or something. So there's fairly severe for doing something wrong with the system. There's fairly severe consequences. But there's also, as the amount of data accumulated by banks and stores and authorities builds up, there is some conflict and some worry about how that will be used by the service providers, the people who are providing the data services, doing the transactions, and so on. So I want to end up here. So this is a bit, one of the things I think is important in looking at ethics, in understanding sort of responsible technology, is to look at history, because in any technology, it doesn't sort of emerge at the moment. It's built up, it's accumulated, it's aggregated over the years. So if we look at the history line for digital IDs, there was some in the First World War in the last century. That was started presumably somewhere when the war started and removed in 1919. In 1939, IDs were required, which obviously were not digital then, but those IDs stayed on until 1952, when there was a lot of worry about how it was affecting British values and civil liberties, and it was removed. And then there was some silence about it until 95, when I've forgotten which government it was, but no, it'll come to me. So there was a Home Affairs Select Committee. Yeah, I think it was John Major, actually, who decided, it was not going to be compulsory. They started developing ideas around national ID. And that was developed, but it never got off the ground at all because an election intervened. So it didn't even get to a white paper. In 2002, under the Blair government, there was some movement towards looking at digital IDs, and this was argued around stopping illegal working, terrorist activity, identity fraud, entitlement to public services, and tacked on convenience. I've forgotten what happened in 2004, so I should have made a note, but 2004 was a new Home Affairs Select Committee paper on it. In 2006, under the Blair government, that was developed into a white paper and then into an identity card act. So there's an act and an implementation. The idea actually was that there would be digital IDs that were available on a card, and that everyone would have one of these. It was tried out at Manchester Airport, and as you see from these little people with their placards up, it got a lot of pushback. By 2010, there were 15,000 people who had this identity card. The Blair government fell to a coalition of Liberal and Conservative, and in 2010 they changed the law. They removed that law and they binned the idea, and it was because of things like expense and privacy. So the identity cards, the National Identity Register, a central register of ID cards, was removed. And I'm using up too much time, so I'll just briefly do the others and make a comment. So you've got in 2010, it stops and it's cut until September 2025, and it's back on the menu. Between that, we have had some the usual government failures. One classic one was Verify. The idea of Verify was to have an app that you would then be able to verify, particularly to get universal credit. It was set up in May 2019. No, it wasn't. It was set up before then. It was stopped in May 2019. I think it was 2015 for several reasons. Here are two stakeholders. The public could not get it to work. So, half the attempts at the transaction were failing. The government part, the idea was 49 government departments would take it on board for their transaction, whether it was tax, health services, I don't know, registering your business or whatever. Of those, I think it was 21 actually engaged, and it didn't really work very well. It was stopped. It was abandoned in 2019. Funding was cut for 2020, and the whole thing was put in its grave in April of 2023, with only 19 government services out of 49 having anything to do with it. There was an initial report from the MPs and a report from the National Audit Office, and some of the lessons, frankly, are systems lessons which we've seen again and again for government systems. Be realistic, get buy-in, get stable leadership. One of the issues with large system failures is you get a civil service person in to lead the government side, and then of course they want to get the next grade up, and sort of 6 months, 2 years, they've cleared off. The poor vendors trying to develop a system are going, who the hell do we talk to now? Then they get somebody in who hasn't a clue, and you start from scratch. So Verify demonstrated the failures that you get on so many systems. The MP Fit, I did a paper on the National Probation Services system. They all fail. I can't think of one that really has succeeded. Do stop me if you know of one. Now, one more thing to end on is that Tony Blair, through the Tony Blair Institute, has been saying this is a great idea since his first time as Prime Minister. And here we have what I've called the Blair Digital Project, and his theme is Time for Digital ID. And this will tell you who you are, really. It will tell you things about you that are true, and it will look at safety and security services. That document, again, if we're going to research it properly, we'd have to analyze that document. Talks about things that, the thing is, you're constantly pushing towards the ethical, to the philosophical framework. In that document, they talk about fairness, control, and convenience. And one thing I picked up is that this digital ID is, from Blair's point of view, a reimagined state. So you see this going on. We have up here from May this year, the Government UK Wallet and its working principles. have been said. It talks about deriving credentials. It talks about adding value, and it talks about going to the private sector for orchestration services. We also, Starmer also cites the veteran card as, so he's trying to put this rhetoric together. It's going to make your lives better. But the underlying purpose is one of controlling migration. And I think for us, this means in looking at responsibility, we need to be opening the bonnet and asking questions of what are the ethical frameworks around this? How does this fit in with the culture? Because if we compare the UK with Estonia, they're very different values and cultures and approaches. So all I've done here, and I'll stop sharing help. All I've done here is try to give you an overview of an issue which really is ripe for research. The government is asking for consultations, and it may be a worthwhile thing as the Responsible Digital Futures group to study this further and provide our own consultation. I think finally, it's a complex system. That it's a system that's relating to another complex system around immigration and everything. Someone's looking for a point solution, which is daft. There is no point solution. And to do that, he's pulling in a complete digital ecosystem. I also think we need to look at theoretical approaches, which I won't go into. But it got me starting to look at, who are the main political philosophers? And I, as you might expect or not know, go back to Alasdair MacIntyre. Thanks for listening. Sorry, I've talked too long.
Well, thank you very much, Neil. This is partly also very